Final presentation is by Eric Solomon, Senior Vice President, Global Digital Audience Measurement for Nielsen, who showcases his company's roadmap for cross-platform ratings. Kelly Abkarian, Senior Vice President, Watch Products Architecture from Nielsen, will be joining the panel for the Q&A.
Thanks, Charlene, and good morning. And I hopped up here real quickly because Howard went over, as you could have predicted. Sorry, Howard. So now I'm going to present Nielsen's point of view on cross-platform, which, when the term cross-platform is thrown out, immediately three big questions jump to mind. Why is it important? What does it actually mean? And ultimately, why is this hard? Shouldn't this be easy? Don't we have all this data? Can't we put all this data together very quickly and easily and come up with ratings data? I'm going to spend the next bunch of minutes talking about our answer to those questions and also our plan for delivering against cross-platform measurement. So there we go. First question, why is this important? Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've spent a lot of time on it in the initial presentations, and it's actually become mom and apple pie. It's important because TV content has escaped the TV set, and it's available via digital media and digital platforms, and it's being consumed that way. Behavior has changed. One data point that we brought to the table is from our cross-platform report, quarterly report, between 2012 and 2013, time spent watching video on smartphones has increased 25%. That's in 1 year. And we only expect that to continue. What happens when behavior changes? The money follows. I already brought up the number that I have on the right here, which is the expectation that brand advertising will be 50% cross-platform within 3 years. So what does that mean? That means the metrics need to follow. To Cameron's point, we need to catch up. Begs the second question, which is, well, what are we talking about? What does this really mean? What is cross-platform? And at Nielsen, we sort of look at cross-platform in a number of different layers. And we think it's important that as we think about these layers and we think about addressing them, that we think about consistency. So that first layer on the bottom is the ability to measure both live and time-shifted media consumption and doing it in a way that's consistent. The second level is device type. That's the one that we usually think of when we think about cross-platform. It's measuring consumption on smartphones, tablets, what have you. But on top of that, you have delivery type, or the way that the content gets to that device. It could be in a browser. It could be in an app. It could come from an over-the-top device connected to a TV. It could go direct to the screen. We need consistency across those as well. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need consistency in measurement against the two predominant ad models in the industry, the digital ads and content separate model and the linear commercials included in the broadcast model. Really important because brand advertisers are looking to reach consumers wherever they are, and they want to have metrics that allow them to understand that reach, how many and how often, in a consistent and additive way. So to get consistency across these different layers, you really need a common platform and architecture. When we think about what that platform requires, we call out 6 things that I'll take you through here. Howard had his list. This is our list. I'm sure everybody has their own. These are the things that we think are critical foundational components for cross-platform. The first is digital coverage and sample size. When you're talking about measuring consumption on digital devices and of digital media, and this point's been made before today, this afternoon, you need very large sample sizes. You need to collect a census in order to get total usage. And then in order to understand the who is using, you need to have large samples of data, or persons, users, people, to allow you to assign the demographics. At Nielsen, we actually have third-party data provider partnerships that give us access to about 180 million persons that we can use in modeling. Second one, really important in light of the first, is a common, single source, highly representative panel that can be used as a source of truth to help correct, calibrate, weight, and balance this data that we're getting from third parties, and make sure that that data is as accurate as possible. Really important. The next one, comparability to TV. This means a number of things. It means, yes, the output metrics need to be able to be compared across platforms. Reach, frequency, GRPs, average commercial minute, C3, average quarter hour. But it also means consistency in the methods for identifying, recognizing content, and calculations and crediting. It also means the ability to provide, it's not working? Okay. Did you turn this one off? All right. Now I got two hands going. Let's see if this works. Is that better? All right, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Okay. Comparability to TV includes the ability to produce overnight data. The fourth piece is mobile measurement. Yes, inclusion of mobile in the metrics, but also the ability to support in-app measurement, the ability to collect a census through the apps, and do a live, real-time assignment of demographics. We think that's very important. And equally important is to ensure that when you're doing mobile, you're enforcing the strictest standards and requirements of privacy. Fifth, viewability. I saw Cheryl Main earlier. Thanks to the efforts of Cheryl and the IAB, viewability is now a standard. It's table stakes. It needs to be included, and it needs to be included cross-platform. Just the way that we need to be able to verify and validate that an ad's been seen online, we need to be able to do that on TV. Nielsen's been doing this for a long time with our Keeping Track service. And finally, and not least important, is MRC accreditation and constant auditing. If these metrics are going to be used to transact business over billions of dollars a year, then these metrics need to be able to stand up to rigorous evaluation and verification. Really critically important. This is part of Nielsen's DNA, something that we take very, very seriously. Going back to the question of that third question, that answers why it's hard. It's hard because you have to do all those things, and it's hard because it requires rigor and it requires investment. It requires investment in a couple of different things. One is panels. Nielsen continues to invest in our National People Meter sample, which is our core calibration panel for all of our cross-platform measurement. Today, the NPM is considered probably the highest quality media panel in the world due to the methods that we use for recruitment, the face-to-face nature of recruitment management, very hands-on. We know exactly who is in that home, who they are, age, gender, and all the demographic data about those folks. The way the panel stands now, about 20,000 households, a little over, 50-some thousand people. We, several years ago, introduced measurement of computer usage in those homes. Just under half of the homes, we're measuring both TV and PC. What we're doing over the course of the next year is increasing the sample. We'll be adding 3,200 homes to the sample in NPM remainder and LPM markets. We'll be recruiting them for cross-platform, so we expect to get another 1,500 or so cross-platform homes. And then the other thing we're doing is slowly and deliberately introducing mobile measurement into that panel as well. Now that's going to take quite a long time because we want to make sure that we don't disrupt that sample in any way. So what we're doing in the meantime is expanding our on-device meter panel for smartphones and tablets from 6,000 to 15,000 devices, where we measure both iOS and Android devices. And yes, Alan, this is incredibly expensive. One other point on panels, real quick before I leave it. The panel today, 20,000 homes, it hasn't always been 20,000 homes. It's grown over the years. from 1,000 in the 80s to 5,000 in the 90s to 10,000 earlier in the 2000s to 20,000 just a few years ago. And we're going to get it up to close to 25,000 in a few years. Point being that Nielsen has expanded the panel as linear TV has fragmented across new channels, new distribution, time shifting, et cetera. But when you talk about digital, that's a game changer. This panel is incredibly useful and necessary for calibration and as our source of truth. But in creating an architecture to do cross-platform measurement, you also need to introduce that census measurement. So let me describe this other investment we're making in our cross-platform architecture and how we intend it to work. You've probably seen this chart before, so I'm not going to belabor it. But what we are able to do through a software meter that sits inside a video player, whether it's in a browser or in an app, is capture content that is either native digital or linear in nature, and recognize it, count the impressions, get an identifier that allows us to understand, connect with our third-party data providers to understand who the person is. It also allows us to collect a watermark, which allows us to use a standard encoding process across TV, smartphones, tablets, computers. The device identifier or the user identifier that we collect allows us to pass to our third-party data providers, who can then tell us in real time who that user is. And all that data that we get from our third-party data providers, as I mentioned before, is corrected and calibrated based on the data that we have from our MRC-accredited NPM panel. All that data is sent through our crediting and calculation engines and allows us to output ratings, either digital ratings or linear TV ratings. So through one architecture, we can support both digital and linear models across all the platforms. And this is what we're actually involved in and working on actively right now. This is our timeline for delivery. In 2014, on the digital side, which is the bottom two rows, we'll have full support for smartphones, tablets, and PCs in our digital ratings by the end of this year, bringing over-the-top connected device support in 2015. On the linear side at the top, we'll be adding smartphone and tablet measurement to the portfolio by the end of this year and starting in the fall. The other thing I did want to call out here is the concept of deduplication. We have two forms of deduplication that we need to do here. One is within an ad model. So for our digital dynamic ratings, deduplication actually happens via our data partners. Our data partners, when they pass us data back, deduplicate that audience for us. And they can do that because they have a high device penetration. So they know when an impression comes in, if it was the same user that they had seen on a smartphone or a tablet or a computer or what have you. So that data is, by its nature, unduplicated. Our linear ratings come from our panel. So those are also unduplicated. The complexity comes into creating deduplication across those models. The way that we're able to do that is by having our single source panel. That NPM panel that is our source of truth and is also acts as a observable sample. You can actually see in a single source environment what the same user is doing across different devices. So without getting into deep methodology, because I only have 1 minute left, what we were able to do is observe what people consume on TV. We observe what they consume on digital devices, and we see what they consume on both. And from that, we have data that allows us to model deduplication across both. Really important at the end of the day, deduplication is about understanding an individual person, a user and their behavior. And having a panel like this is really critical to being able to do that, particularly when you're working in a world, which we're all moving into, of large data sets and census data. So in sum, well-timed. We talked about our perspective on what cross-platform, why it's important, what it actually means, and why it's hard. And it is hard. And it's not going to be solved immediately, but we're making great progress. At the end of the day, this is all about opportunity. It's about opportunity for broadcasters to take advantage of all these new delivery mechanisms and get Nielsen credit, Nielsen ratings for within and outside the C3 window. It's opportunity for digital publishers to get in the game and be able to have data that is of the same quality and rigor that broadcasters have had to use to buy and sell advertising. And ultimately, the advertiser benefits from having data that creates accountability and delivers a cross-platform view. And at the end of the day, if the advertisers have confidence, more dollars will flow. And we'll get to that 50% or even higher in cross-platform advertising. So with that, I am done. I guess, Charlene, we move on to the panel. All right.